322 of Retro Encounter, RPGFan's weekly podcast of many topics. I'm Alana Hagues, and I am back with the same three panelists as last week to talk more Skies of Arcadia. We've sailed around the world, we've found out the world is round, we have gone through Atlantis, maybe, and we have got all the moon crystals, or not, or... We've done a bunch of things. We've saved the world of Arcadia, and we're all kings of rogues, I assume. So let me reintroduce the panel, starting with Wes Iliff.
Hey, everybody.
Zach Wilkerson.
Hello.
And Audra Bowling.
Hiya.
And so, this is some people's first time through Skies, which is a notoriously difficult game to get a hold of, which is probably why a lot of people haven't played it, and why it's kind of got this semi-cult classic, like reputation about it. But Audra, obviously I know you're one of the newcomers to the game, and I know you didn't quite get to the end, but how have you found the experience so far? Just kind of summary.
I've enjoyed it. I do feel like maybe there's certain dated aspects to it now. Like, I would kill for a save anywhere ability. But I really, really enjoy the plot. It's just a fun story that kind of just makes you feel stuff.
It does, right, yeah. Yeah, dungeons are a bit of a pain. Some of them are quite long and you only get like 2 save points in them.
Yes.
You can save anywhere on the world map though, which is quite nice. There's like a save feature there, so it's maybe a little bit more ahead in some, well, I guess it's like any other RPG of that time, but yeah, no, it's certainly a pain in dungeons when you're just getting like hammered with random encounters.
Yeah, I had one where I almost was late to work because I was trying to finish a dungeon.
Oh no!
I was like, I can do it, I can just make it to the next part.
And, oh no,
yeah.
That wasn't the Blue Moon dungeon, was it?
No, it was the Sacred Mountain.
Oh yeah, that's Moonstone Mountain, the one that the one that we were already hating on last week. We've got another one to hate on this week as well, so don't worry. And Zach, I know you also haven't played this before, so how do you feel about Skies overall?
I mean, I agree with Audra generally. I mean, to me, the biggest issue is the speed of the game, and it's not like I actually think the game like feels slow at times, but you know, if maybe you have ways to speed it up, maybe it is a more pleasant experience in some ways. But yeah, I mean, I think particularly the second half, I thought was super fun when you got the ability to fly above or below the clouds. Because I always thought like exploration was just kind of a pain because of the encounter rate, but like I liked it a lot better there. I loved recruiting people for your town, being able to build up your town as a Suikoden fan. You know, that's gets right after the things that I appreciate. And I thought there were like some really moving moments in the second half. It got a little easy, I thought, in the second half too. If you just go buy strength seeds and just pump up Vice. But overall, I thought the second half, I enjoyed the second half more than the first half.
Yeah, generally I share that.
Yeah, I think that was my opinion too, was I really liked what I've played of the second half, so.
No, it's really great when everything starts to open up and you get the ship, your actual own ship. It's like, I know, like the whole world map opens up and you've got like the whole grid, but you can't see everything on there, and it's like, all of a sudden there's this world of opportunity in front of you, and you actually start to feel like that kind of ambition that Vice actually had at the beginning of the game. Wes, I know you and I have already played this a number of times, and I know you were revisiting it for the first time in a little while, so how would you find this replay?
So first, I still gotta agree with them on like with everyone on, you know, the first half versus the back half, because when I started there was all this nostalgia flooding and I'm like, yeah, I love this, this is one of my favorite games of all time. And then around like Ixataka there's a little bit of a dip and you're like, okay, do I not love this as much as I used to? And then you get your own ship and it like, oh no, I totally do, ratchets it right back up. But it's a game that could really use some love, a remaster, remake, something that sands off some of the older rough edges, because I was playing on original hardware, which was my mistake, because trying to be a parent and play this game is incredibly difficult, because the game wants you to sit down for really long play sessions that I just couldn't afford.
Yeah, I remember I used to make big chunks of my way through this as a kid, because like I remember really vividly, like I'd had like a sick day on school and I was like, oh okay, I'm gonna play Skies, so I just plugged the GameCube in my room and then like play it, and in like a 7-hour period I would get so far, and then like for the rest of the week I wouldn't be able to play it because I had like homework and stuff like that, and I was like, oh. And then it was only at the weekends really that I could really blast through it. And like this time around, like when I sort of like picked up an old save file which was right at the end of the game. I didn't leave any save files earlier, and so I was just like flying around, re-exploring some of the areas, going around and getting discoveries and stuff like that. And I'm like, God, you can't really sit down and play this in like bites, can you? Because like there's so much about it being like interconnected. There's so much about you traveling around. The dungeons they're not like long, but they are, I don't know, there's something about them that like the pacing of them and the way they're laid out, you can get lost sometimes. And obviously the random encounter rate is kind of extortionate at times. But yeah, like I remember when I was watching Zach play it over here, and we got to Ixataka, I was kind of a bit like, I don't like this dungeon, and this is racist, and this is that, and oh god, and then I remembered like rewatching some cutscenes later on. I was like, no, hang on a minute, hang on, and then I picked it up this morning for a bit, and then I just had a stupid smile on my face for about 3 or 4 hours. I was just flying around, killing enemies, discoveries, doing bounties and stuff like that, and I was like, yeah, this is it. This is why it's really hard to put into words. Like, it's not like anything deeply, like some of my other games that I really love have got like real deep like story meanings to them and stuff like that, but Skies just hits like a completely different level for a totally different reason.
It's a game that like when it hits hard, and what it does when it hit is something that very few other games do. There's a few things we can compare, like building up your crew to and customizing your ship and exploring and all that, but few things bring it all together in the same way, so it gives you a very unique feel, kind of beginning to end.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think that the world and the map and the traveling is kind of what brings it all together for me. Just like that amount of freedom that you get, or even like I think Zach, you made this point last week. You said that like it's a way of being linear, but also not feeling linear, I suppose, or something like that. I'm probably twisting your words a little bit, but certainly there's something about it. Like you can go in this direction, but also there's like, the wide spread of the map. You can go wherever you want, really, but as long as you end up in this location, then that's fine. But yeah, the one thing I did really appreciate more this time around, and again, maybe it's because it's been like 6 years since I've like last played it, is we talked a lot about combat last week, so we won't dwell on it too much. But like, yeah, it's one of the first games really that I ever remember breaking the combat in to quite a degree that I really do like break stuff, because I tend to just play things normally, but Sky is like I just got everything. Like we talked about like the different meters to manage like MP and SP and everything like that. But like once you get your own island and start recruiting people for your crew, the like possibilities to break characters becomes even greater. Like just the amount of stuff you can buy, it's really, really fun. But that's like one thing I've learned to really appreciate this time around. But we'll carry on from where we were last time and probably like dart around back and forth. So after getting to NASA with Vice and Gilda, we go to Decat's Island, which is this weird split dungeon where you have to swap back and forth between Vice and Gilda and Ica and Fina. And it's fine. It's okay. It's like one of these really like gimmicky dungeons that I think Skies tries to do a few times. The only thing I love about Dakat's Island is it's like everybody's going after this like, it's the repeated like joke in this game, like there's a bit of treasure there and we're gonna go get there and we're gonna like be rich and we're gonna be able to buy a boat and find Ica and Fina or find Vice. And then it's just like a note in a treasure box that's just like, oh, the real treasure is the friends we made along the way. It's like a joke. Like, oh.
It's
But
very
it's
much a
true.
yay friendship game. Yeah.
It is, yeah. It is.
It's so true.
It is. It is a JRPG all about friendship. Never heard about that before. But I've always really liked that. I used to be like rolling my eyes as a kid, like, oh, really? But like, funnily enough, like the older I get, I'm just like, oh yeah, teamwork. It's great. But then shortly after that, the four of them reunite at the end. They go back to NASA, and Ramirez has come to attack the town, and you get kidnapped and taken to the Grand Fortress. And the Grand Fortress is, again, you get split up into two groups, kind of, and then well, you don't control the other group. You have to fight Vigoro, which, fun fact, Vigoro is voiced by Charles Martinet in the UK, the English dub. So, just like don't think about it too hard, especially given that Vigoro is a sleaze and a slouch, and there's definitely not an implied rape scene in that area at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty rough. They and I think you told me this, Alana, that they actually censored it from what it was originally.
Correct.
Which is impressive because it is very casual about what is clearly an attempted rape, and his arc of finding himself again later in the game. No, thank you. It's a little troubling.
Yeah. Yeah, I see Vigoro. Vigoro, interestingly, is the only Armada member you ever fight one-on-one, and it becomes this like rivalry between Vice and him, and I really don't like that dynamic at all, given his character. I mean, I might as well just say it now. Like the post game or the secret boss is Vigoro because he becomes a sky pirate, and it's like, I don't like this kind of redemption arc that you're getting. I don't actually, and it sucks because like all of the other Armada members, apart from like, well, I say all of the others, Deloco and Alfonso, I don't really like either, but they kind of meet their ends, their own ways. But Bellezza and the last one, Gregorio, who we'll talk about in a second, who I genuinely think these two are really good characters.
Bellezza is a great character.
Bellezza is a great character. I love Gregorio as well. But yeah, like it's very interesting that Vigoro is the one who kind of get like the hand-to-hand combat. I would have loved it, and I guess Ramirez is technically like the sixth, isn't he? But
yeah, and we actually, correct me if I'm wrong, hadn't met Ramirez as of the cut point for the last episode, right?
We didn't know. We'd seen him in cutscenes and we mentioned him very briefly on the episode. But yeah, Ramirez, you find out pretty early on. Fina recognizes him on the assault on NASA, and you find out pretty quickly that he's also from the same place that Fina's from, and has somehow been roped into Valor's scheme to take over the world. But this is a thread that runs throughout the second half of the game, really, in that you're trying to get the moon crystals, but Ramirez's kind of purpose for coming to Arcadia itself is unveiled a lot later on, and Fina's as well, really. But yeah, what do we think of Ramirez, really?
His introduction is the most JRPG thing imaginable. I'm like, oh, it's a burning village and he has silver hair and he's good with the sword. Who does that sound like? I'll talk about some other very Sephiroth-like things toward the end. I mean, like he cuts an imposing figure. I feel like he is potentially an interesting character. He's actually one of the few things in the second half of the game that I was a little disappointed with how they handled him.
Yeah,
I feel like there's a lot of stuff they could have done. Some of the side quest stuff tries to characterize him more, but like it still doesn't work for me. But I do think that they could have done more to maybe sort of indicate how imposing he is, but I think that he is at least cool, and man, he has some great battle animations and fights. I might have been fast forwarding through parts of this game, but I was like, I'm gonna go back down to normal speed for this.
Yeah, I do. I've always been a big fan of that, like the first fight in Soltis with him. Like that's probably my favorite one-on-one boss fight in the game, just because of, oh god, what's it called? Is it called Silver Eclipse? Silver Eclipse, yeah. Was like
that's the one.
That's the one. And yeah, just really like slices through the screen, and I'm like, oh, this is cool. I definitely fancied him when I was like 8 or 9, because you know what? It was like whatever. I was just sad emo anime boys, right? But yeah, I think that I like Ramirez, but yeah, like I don't think. I don't want to say there's like not a lot of space for him in this game, but like I think he fits like the stereotype that the game wants him to fit, and that's pretty much it. And you got to remember as well, like that stuff that characterizes him through the Moonfish quests was added in the GameCube version, so it's not even in the original Dreamcast version.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, like honestly, like I didn't think that stuff helped. I think that maybe I would have liked him better if they hadn't done that.
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh, you're trying to give him a backstory, but it just says what we already knew, basically. Like it's not. It actually cheapens his turn, I think, more a little bit personally. I mean, like it's not a big deal, but like I'm like, like we're talking about Saturday morning cartoons here, but I just wanted there to be a little bit more to a character who was such a cool design.
Right. Yeah. And interestingly, and this might be me being really picky, and I remember reading some stuff about this a while ago. I think I touched on this really briefly last time. But like Valor as an empire is based on the Spanish Armada, so like all of the admirals have Spanish names. Valor itself kind of has a bit of a Spanish pronunciation. And why has Ramirez got a Spanish name when he's not from Valor? Or is this just me being like really like overthinking it? Like he shouldn't have that because Fina doesn't have a Spanish name because she's not from there, and it's like she recognizes that name, and I'm like, but would that have been his real name? I don't know. Maybe it's just a coincidence. Probably. I'm probably thinking about it too hard. Saturday morning cartoon stuff, right? See, this tells you about all the important stuff that I worry about when I play video games. It's like, why is that name not in canon? Why is it just this? But yeah, minor things. I think Ramirez is cool, and I like that. That's really as far as I'll ever go because he has some of my favorite battle animations, and the fight with him is really cool. The last fight less so, but you know, he kind of has his big like. I assume when you refer to more Sephiroth comparisons, Zach, you mean like his big kind of breakdown moment towards the end.
No, I mean his one winged angel moment.
Oh,
Where
that
he's like
moment.
literally the last boss, and it's
yeah.
like, oh, it's the same.
Pretty much.
Sephiroth is a little harder, but yeah.
Yeah.
He's one in a long line of villains from a time when RPGs were not shy about just fully copying Sephiroth's steez there. Like, there was no shame.
Yeah, and again, I guess he's not really like he ends up being the final boss, but really he's just misguided, I guess, is like I'll say it like that. Because really Galcian is kind of the main villain, and you know, he meets his end, which we'll get to a little bit later. But obviously getting out of the Grand Fortress, this impossible fortress, which of course, you know, impossible is just a word people use to oh god, whatever the rest of the quote is, as Vice would say. Vice manages to break out of the Grand Fortress, but they manage to break out with a prototype ship called the Delphinus, and they manage to break out with the Prince of Valois, Enrique, who willfully submits himself to be kidnapped by the Blue Rogues because he opposes his mother, who's Theodora, who is the Empress of Valois, and he does not like the way she rules, kind of like how Garnet's trying to understand Braun in Final Fantasy IX. There's a little bit of a comparison there. And Enrique becomes your next party member. Gilda disappears after only having him for 2 dungeons. He goes away, and Enrique...
I guess Clara was just too scary for him.
I mean, that's pretty much how he goes, isn't it? Like, she's sailing behind them, and he's like, I've got to go now, bye. And it's like, okay then. But yeah, you get Enrique, and Enrique is basically your final party member for the rest of the game, apart from like 1 or 2 moments, and obviously the end game where you can select who you take with you to the final dungeon. But yeah, Enrique is a little bit like a weaker version of Vice, but more focused on magic, but probably has the most useful super move in the entire game, because it makes everybody god for 4 measly SP, and yeah, I basically only ever use Enrique in the end game, especially for the super bosses.
Yeah,
it's pretty good.
It feels like he's who they wanted you to use, even though he's less cool than either of the other 2 third and 4th characters.
Very less cool, as in like he gets airsick, he can't jump off boats, he is decidedly goofy and uncool, and the game takes the mickey out of him a lot.
But he does get the princess.
Yeah.
Oh no, I do love Enrique a lot, actually. Like I mean it affectionately. I used to have this joke where, like, you know, you said that like Fina ended up being a punching bag for you, Zach. Like, Enrique has always been my punching bag. Like, he always gets attacked, and I'm like, you got confused and you're poisoned now, and oh, he's dead again. It's fine, you know. Just it was always Enrique for me. It's like, I do love that cutscene in Yafatoma where like Aika like pushes him off the boat and she like jumps down. And he's like, oops. But yeah, Enrique is fun. But yeah, he does get Moegi. And he's very idealistic. He's very much, you know, again, like he's a little bit like Garnet in FF9, who wants to they love their kingdom, but they do not love the methods that their ruler or their mother is using. So they will do everything they can to solve it without killing them. But we all know that never ends out right. But yeah. Okay, what flag did everyone pick? That's the most important question I've got to ask.
The one was that the one with the cat on it?
You went for the one with the cat on it.
Absolutely.
Really?
I like that one, but I went with the dolphin.
You surprised me, sir. Yeah, the dolphin's my favorite.
I went with the goofiest one imaginable because I thought it was
funny. Wes, which one do you normally go for?
The dolphin is definitely the cutest, but I went back to my old, teenage gotta have the cool one ways just for nostalgia's sake and used, the vice flag.
Yeah, I've done all of them at one point, but the dolphin one is definitely my favorite, even if it is adorable and not at all imposing. But it's the dolphin constellation. All the Valuan ships are named after different constellations, which is why it's called the Delphinus, the Auriga, Rhinoceros, Lynx.
I didn't realize that.
That's the cool. Hydra. Oh god, I cannot remember the other two. The Chameleon, and somebody remind me what Vigorose is called, if it's that important.
If you don't remember, I think there's a low chance the rest of us are going to remember.
Yeah, but they're all named after different constellations, so yeah, that's a fun thing. But yes, once you get the Delphinus, Gilda goes, Enrique stays with you, and you get a little stowaway. Marco's in the back of the ship, and he becomes your first crew member. And now the entire game opens up because you go back to the island you were stranded on, and there's two builders on there that Gilda hired along. You've got a builder and an engineer, and they're like, oh, we can change this island into your base, and we can tune up your ship and everything like that. And Crescent Island becomes your home, basically, and oh boy, you can't do a lot of customization with it. It's kind of like Suikoden level of customization with a little bit extra. You just get more and more people, and they get you more shops and more stuff to do on that island. But you can change the layout and the design of it a little bit. You can get your own cupel fountain, which I highly recommend. And
I mean, that was a no-brainer.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, easy choice.
And yeah, Crescent Island is really, really cool. I think it really goes a long way to adding to the atmosphere and the mood of the game. It's just really cool to leave it when you go off to go to Yaphetoma. And then you come back after Yaphetoma and you see it's all built up and you're just like, oh my god, the music's changed and it's just really, really cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is, for me, the town building part. And it's funny because sometimes town building games, despite my affection for Suikoden, annoy me. When I played Ni no Kuni 2, I was like, oh my gosh, this is such micromanaging crap.
It's the best part of Ni no Kuni 2.
I didn't really like that game, so maybe. But I do like that there's just a little bit of level of customization. You give a little bit more money, and you're sort of steadily getting more things as it goes. And I like that you're gone for long enough, as you said, that it seems realistic that the place would be built back up, because it's where do these two guys come from? Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it is it's a delightful little home base. I wish it was maybe a little more central to the rest of the map, but other than that, it was so hard for me to find that little I don't know, tunnel that I had to go through before I was able to fly above things that it frustrated me, but otherwise I thought it was great.
Yeah, it's north of NASA and west of Valor, which feels like a really stupid decision given who you're going up against. And also the fact that Valor and NASA are potentially going to go to war again, and you're right in between the two factions. It's yeah, well done, Vice. Well done.
Location.
Convenience. I mean, it's in the shape of a crescent moon, so we need more moon symbolism, obviously. But yeah, the base is super cool, and we'll go over crew probably towards the end, really, because I think that's a big part of it. But so you sail off after getting Crescent Island. You go to Esperanza, which is definitely a misspelling of that word, which means hope. And this does the Valor thing again a little bit here, doesn't it? I think, but trying to force Vice's extreme optimism on people who've essentially given up. But it's not too bad this time, I don't think.
I didn't really have that as a person who levied that criticism very strongly last episode, I didn't think it was too bad here. I mean, because like you're talking to people, and again, I think the problem with that was that they went so hard on how bad it was for the lower city people,
Yeah.
and gosh, even later when there's like a moon falling down on Valois, they had to make sure you were aware of it again
Yep.
to show like, oh, but what about my dress for the upper city people? But here, I thought that people talked about other things, and it wasn't hitting you over the head with it quite as much, I thought.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely a different kind of like. I mean, Don himself is kind of just like. I mean, I enjoy that this game censors like alcohol, but he's definitely drunk. Like, how do you like sell that for a game that like censors alcohol out of it? Like, but he's just essentially given up, and a number of these people here are like have tried to sail through this place called the Dark Rift, and many of them have lost their friends, colleagues, lives, like partners, things like that there. And then they just give up because it's literally like the dividing force between them and the rest of the world and freedom. So this town that was originally built by Valois as like a base is now like this like destitute, like not destitute, but it's like an abandoned place where people just go to live out the rest of their days. And yeah, Vice gives a few people a little bit of a whipping, I suppose. Yeah, you're definitely right. It's not too bad here, but like I definitely like when I rewatched it, I was like, you could tone down a little bit, and at least Ika's there to kind of hold you back this time. But all right, that's fine. Like
my biggest criticism of Esperanza was how hard it was to find. It's like
yeah.
around a corner, and like I went all the way through the land of ice. Like I went all the way to one side, all the way back, and I'm like, wait a second, where is this? And then eventually I just had to look up a guide because I could not find it. So that is my biggest criticism of Esperanza.
Well, there you go. I mean, it's about discovering things, and you did it. You just needed a little map in the form of the 21st century. So there you go.
In the form of watching a Let's Play to show me how to get to it.
Yeah. Well, in my day, when I played Skies of Arcadia, Let's Plays didn't exist. So
in my day.
Yeah. But this is where you meet your final member of the Armada, Gregorio, who happens to be Enrique's uncle. And Gregorio is very different. He's kind of like Bellezza in a way. Like, he's not someone who enjoys using violence. He's got a pretty big reputation as I think he's called the Iron Wall. And he's a very, like, he's like moderate. He knows his place, and he doesn't want to bring any harm to Enrique, basically. He has a really, really good moment towards the end of the game, for sure. But like him and Bellezza both do. But yeah, his fight's interesting because this is really your first Armada fight with the Delphinus at this point. So this is kind of your first time to really see it in action properly.
Yeah. Can we talk about how busted the Delphinus is?
Oh,
So good.
Yeah,
it's so cool.
It's so cool. I think I love how like how did I put it last time? I enjoy the little Jack because like it feels like you're this tiny little boat going up against all the odds, but you are just a fishing boat at the end of the day. And then the game decides to do the complete like 360 and go like, all right, so you've had this fishing boat. We're now going to give you a prototype planet destroying weapon boat now. And it's like, oh, okay. But yeah, it's really fun to like play around with that, and yeah, the Moonstone Cannon is absolutely busted.
I just feel like the defenses are higher too. Like I don't remember what the stats were. Maybe I just got better at the game. I don't know. But like second half of this game with ship battles, I was like, oh, it's the third round and it's over. So yeah, man, even against like the final ship battle boss, which is supposedly supposed to be something that's more powerful that Valois built, and even there, it's like, oh, got it. But man, every time that animation for the Moonstone Cannon came out, oh, it was so delightful.
So good. Delightful. It's so good.
Never feels less satisfying.
One of my favorite part of the game. One of them.
Every time I see that symbol, I'm like, right, put your increment on, do this, do that, do that. And I'm like, make sure your torpedo like fires on that, and make sure that your 3-inch cannon is also going to shoot on that one. Make sure you're going to get 4 hits on one turn, that you do like 120,000 damage. And it's like, bye. It's like you watch the Gigas sink under the sky and just like bye. It's very satisfying. The fight with Gregorio is interesting because it's one of those ones that relies on choice again a little bit. Like you have to kind of dodge out of the way of his ship quick enough because he rams into you. But he's a lot smaller than the Delphinus. But he kind of leaves honorably. And we'll talk a little bit more about him later. But then one of Sky's other gimmicks that only comes up a few times is the Dark Rift and one other dungeon. I hate the other one more. But
You hate it more than the Dark Rift? Ooh,
I hate
don't
the Maw of
know.
Tartarus more than the Dark Rift.
Oh, the Dark Rift is rough.
The Dark Rift is an airship dungeon, which I think in practice is cool, except they take a map away from you. And I'm used to having a map in Dungeons and Skies because I know you don't have a map in front of you when you're on the world map, but like the Dark Rift, I think, is really interesting in a like story and lore perspective, but it is a pain in the backside to get around in.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I got lost so many times in there, and I was like, I got to get all my chests. Like I'm gonna go through all these different portals and vortexes, and I have no idea where I am. And I got turned around like 7 times in there.
Yeah.
To me, I like you said, I like the idea of the ship dungeons, but in both cases, the choices they made about them to make them both like dark and confusing and difficult to navigate and just generally mostly unpleasant to look at. Although this one was better than the second one on that front.
They have to be like ship graveyards.
Yeah. That's. I mean, I guess I didn't think about it that way, but yeah, did not enjoy.
Yeah, I mean the Dark Rift is basically supposed to be the Bermuda Triangle, right? That's what its equivalent is in the real world, and that's what it's based off of. But I think it's a really cool idea, and there's certainly like implications in the Dark Rift that there may have been a 7th moon at some point.
Oh yeah, the Black Moon.
Mm-hmm, the
That's
Black
pretty
Moon.
neat.
Yeah, the Black Moonstone. So I think it's really cool, and I wish the game went into that a little bit, but I also kind of get why, because like it's old history, isn't it? Right? Like not many people know about the Reigns of Destruction at this point, and people only find out about it through learning through other people's culture and stuff. And obviously you find a crew member in there because you find Polly's husband in there, don't you? Robinson.
Robinson, yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
you have to go back and get him. Definitely not Shipwreck. Many different novels from the 18th century, I think, have gone into the inspiration of this game. But yeah, the Dark Rift is cool and frustrating and weird, and yeah, those portals that you go through because they all look so similar. It's like, and then if you go through the wrong one, it takes you right back to the beginning, doesn't it? Or like back to the previous room. So yeah, but then you end up on the other side, and you end up in Asia, like just Asia, just the whole of Asia. Yafatoma is cool, I think, generally. We'll gloss over the fact that the villains are definitely stereotypes again. Maybe. But Yafatoma is the Water and Wind Kingdom, and I really like the way it's laid out, even if it is, again, a pain in the backside to navigate, kind of like Ixataka. Like, you have to use these little, like, tub boats to, like, get around on the islands.
Yeah, but that felt like a fun gimmick as
It's
opposed
cute.
to, like, ladders that take you 17 minutes to walk up and down. So I thought Yafatoma was awesome. I thought it was a really cool town.
Oh, yeah, I love it. It's so fun. I just really like the design of it as well. It's very, very cool. But yeah, I still think it's really funny. Of like an aside, like all of the people who run the Sailors Guild are all the same, like white dude. Like, why would you not have like something more appropriate in every kingdom? I guess, but
We're not made out of character models. Are you kidding me?
I know, right? I know, it's crazy. But yeah, yeah, Yafatoma is really fun to navigate, I think. It's one of those ones like I like going around Ixataka and up the ladders and down the slide in particular to the inn. I think that's really fun. But obviously it's a bigger town and it's more of a pain, but like actually like using the paddle boats to like open the gates and like get to secret areas in the town, I think is really cool. But you obviously meet the princess and you have to go to Mount Kazai, which is where the Blue Moon Crystal is situated. And last week I was talking about dungeon I probably hated more than Moonstone Mountain, and it's this.
Yeah, it's not a fun dungeon.
It's a nightmare because, you know, you get like this massive like I can only call it a space suit because it's a deep dive suit, isn't it? Right. And
Yeah.
you have to like walk through water areas, but there's these rooms where you have to like drop down holes to land on platforms, and the camera like shifts every time you do it, so it's like you can't tell which platform you're going to land on. And then if you miss, you've got to walk all the way back, and the movement is so slow. And it's just like, I'll never remember every time to land on the right place. I mean, how did everyone else feel about Mount Kazai?
I just had recently played the Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic,
Mm-hmm.
and they had an underwater segment that's very similar. So I was like, oh, fun. But sarcastically.
Yes. Oh,
I didn't mind it too much, except for that room. Honestly, like that room, I eventually just again pulled up a Let's Play and I was like, which one do I fall down? Because there's no way I could figure it out. That part was annoying, but the rest of it, like I like the music,
yeah.
and I thought that like the atmosphere was appropriate. So I didn't mind it too much. But yeah, that part, the platform part, like the obsession with like looking down at things in this game, I don't know where that comes from.
Right.
But anytime they have the impulse to make you look down at something to figure out what you're supposed to do, it's a bad move.
Do you think, like, not to like make a sweeping assumption, but a lot of the team that made this are people who made like Phantasy Star, and do you think that maybe they were like, this is the first 3D RPG we've made, let's like explore all of the avenues and all of the corners we can use, we can look down now, like
I think that's definitely a part of it, but like
I know.
they managed to pull so many things from other games, like in terms of combat or exploration, and kind of like refine them really well, that it's frustrating that it was like that one thing
Yeah.
it was just like a dumb gimmick that I mean, there are other parts of the game that obviously like I've criticized, but that was the part where I'm just like, what are you thinking? Like, it's not like I don't have the right spatial awareness for it or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, I found myself this time around realizing that the camera is never your friend at any point in Skies of Arcadia, but most of the content, it doesn't really matter. The places are easy enough to navigate that you don't need fine-tuned camera control, but as soon as something comes into play where you do, you realize, oh, this is squirrely, isn't it?
Oh yeah, it really likes to like yank itself back right behind Vice all the time. It feels like you're fighting it a little bit. So yeah, not my favorite dungeon. Again, the mood is cool. I think it's one of those ones that, you know, when you have like games that you love and you always remember this one section that you did as a kid and that you got really stuck on. And I think this was one of them, because there's that corridor where you have to like keep filling up the room with water, and those statues can turn you to stone. And I think as a kid, I never kind of got my head around like status effects items or status effect like equipment. And so I'm just like, how do I stop them? And then it's like, oh wait, I need one of those things on. What are they called? Oh, never mind. They've got a name, and I'll see them and I remember them because I see one and I'm like, you are going on Fina right now. And then there's the boss at the end, which does oh god, an invulnerability move on and off throughout the fight.
Oh yes, the turtle.
Yeah, Tortigar, and also
Tortigar is just one of my favorite names for an enemy ever, just for the record. I used that for online screen names for years after this came out.
beautiful. I love that. Yeah, so he does like silver skin, and then he's also like uses Sacrulen partway through the fight. It's fine if you're just doing the, you know, buff up, use prophecy, because prophecy is an immediate, like, it overrides every other action in the game. But if you don't know about Silver Skin and you don't know about Sacrulen, then, you know, it's a pain in the backside, which I didn't know as a kid. And I was just like, I've just been trying to fight this thing for 10 minutes. And it's just like, why is bosses should not be allowed to heal, one of those like stroppy moments. But I think generally it's better than I remember it, but like I still don't like Mount Kazai for how slow it is. But you did meet earlier, and someone you have to like interact with later, because obviously the two king's advisors have been like working with Valois, and Bellezza and Vigoro are here. You have to have a ship fight with Vigoro later, which is okay. It's one of the, I mean, we've already talked about how easy the ship fights are at this point in the game, so probably won't go into it too much. But before that, you have to go to Tenko Island. You'd already fought Zhao Mao, and then you meet Diago, who is Moegi's brother. And Diago's cool, I think. Diago's like a goof. I kind of wish Diogo was on your crew at some point. I think he'd be fun.
Yeah, he would have been a fun party member.
Yeah, I mean, I like his whole affect, but I actually think that because the invasion happens before you go to his island, right?
Yes.
I think so. Yeah, but I thought he was a cool character, and Beletza being here also improved this section of the game dramatically. So
Beletza is great. But yeah, the invasion happens while you're in Mount Kazai, if I remember. So you come back from Mount Kazai, and they Valor are there, like negotiating with the Emperor, and they're kind of hesitant about it. And I think you run away because I believe Moegi or someone, I can't remember. It's really bad. But you basically
that's correct.
You have to run away, don't you?
She helps you escape.
Yeah, Valor are after you, so the only way you can get off the island is by escaping, and she takes you to Tenko Island, where you go and get Diago's help, basically, and then you go and fight him. So you have fight Vigoro, and then, surprise, surprise, the Gigas wakes up because the Blue Moon Crystal's in the possession of the advisors, and Blue Aim is definitely a bit of a step down, I think, from Grendel and Recumen in terms of the fight. Like, he does so much less damage. Like, that was the fight that I remember as a kid being like, oh, why is he only doing like 3,000 damage? It's like taking like a slither of health off. But I don't know if anyone had like any problems with him at all, or...
No, that was actually surprisingly easy for me.
It was, yeah.
No, I mean, all ship battles in the second half of this game are pretty easy. So this was maybe the easiest.
Yeah.
Oh, see, like, if... I love, there's one, the one of the last ones is one of my favorites, but again, it's probably because of playing it and finding it really difficult as a kid, and because of the spectacle of it. Like, it's a giant fortress. Like, of course I'm going to be excited to take this thing down. Now it's just satisfying to take it down in like 2 laser beams, right? Like, but yeah, Yafatoma, I think, is definitely where things, like, I think the minute you get the Delphinus, like, things get more interesting and like more exciting, and I think Yafatoma is definitely maybe one of the best handled areas in the game. And then you discover that the world is round, which I think is a really fun discovery, like, especially playing it in 2022 when like flat earthers are such a big thing. I just have to sit there and smirk. But it's funny because like JRPG world map geography does not translate well to round worlds, because I don't want to get into it, but if you like fold it, it's not going to make a round world. But you know,
I love that you know that.
I mean, it doesn't, like, it just,
yeah, that's true. Actually,
it doesn't. I just remember reading it a long time ago and then just going like, wait, what? And I was like, oh no, my immersion. I'm like, and just sitting there with a map, like,
This
oh,
immersion breaking round world.
oh,
That's where the flat
no.
earthers come in.
It's more like a cone, actually. But yeah, let's wait until they say that. What's that joke? Like, we'd know if the world was flat because cats would push things off the edge of it. That's like a joke that I read once. But yeah, you go back to Crescent Island, you get your very first Delphinus upgrade. So I think now's a good time before we move on with the plot to go on to discoveries, because boy, does the world open up to you at this point. You get to go above the clouds, and oh my, how fun is this? So this isn't like the last upgrade you get. You get one that lets you go into the deep sky. You get a stronger hull, which I think you also get here as well.
Yes,
because you can break through the ice in the lands of ice. But essentially, like, things just begin to like not only do they like open up, it's like not Pandora's box opening, but like some other metaphor that's like, well, there you go, you've cracked the egg open and then it's all there for you. So yeah, we've touched on discoveries on and off, but like, is there any like really memorable discoveries anyone found, or anyone, you can talk about any of them like at any point in the game, because I think really this is what makes, I think Sollosi said it this way, I think Arcadia is also a character in Skies of Arcadia. Like, this is a world that, like, the lore of Arcadia is not hugely important, but it's something that you discover yourself, and it's just so fun because every discovery's got like flavor text about it. It's just super fun. But yeah, if anyone's got one, let me know, or I can go first.
I really like the flying machine that you find at the bottom of the world, and it's just like, we don't know how it got here, but it can fly, so that's pretty cool. and I'm just like, all right. Like I was just like, I feel like you were just like not sure what to write about this, and I loved that. There are
That
also like some like
that
golden flying birds that I discovered that were cool.
oh yeah. There's a that flying machine is a GameCube edition, so I'm actually not even surprised that they're just like, oh, this would be cool to put in here. How do we make it fit into the world's lore? Like, we're not even gonna try.
That was incredible.
I
Oh.
like the whole Ixanis village.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's linked to a bounty as well. You have to find that to fight the XNS demons.
I think you have to get it to have Tika Tika join you.
You do, yeah, that's right.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's pretty
So
cool.
that was a pretty neat one.
Yeah, I like that
And
one.
Spice Island, because I like food.
Yeah, it's very cool because like you get some of those spices throughout the game, and then you're like find out where they're from, and it's like, oh yeah, it makes sense now.
I mean, you actually have to go to that discovery to complete a side quest too.
You
For one
do,
of the
yes.
Abric Chams. Yeah.
Yep, for one of the Abric Chams, you have to. It's the daughter. The daughter runs the tavern in Esperanza, doesn't she? And the mother runs the kebab shop in Maramba, and you have to like go between them, and you have to like. The daughter has to make her mother's secret recipe for the kebabs and take them back. And yeah, it's a really cool quest, actually, I think. It's a cute
I thought
one.
it was fun.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of the rabbits.
Yes!
Tiny little flying rabbits that live their entire life clinging to the underside of Valua. It's beautiful.
I love them.
I did not discover that one. That sounds awesome.
Yeah.
They got like big ears that are translucent and they look like bat wings. It's very cool. It's one of the ones I found this morning, actually. I was like, I'm going to find the rabbits. It was like the first thing I did. I was like, I know where these are. Yeah, I think all the animal ones are really fun. And like this does like West's rabbits. Like this is like rapigs are always my first thought, which is Tales of the Abyss. But like Japanese RPGs love to like smoosh together two different animal names to make a brand new animal. It's like fuzzy felt animal time. And you've got Dursey as well, which are deer moose, which I think are really cool. And then there's these like gorilla type monsters as well that you can just find. And I think all of the animals. There's also just icebergs, which are really just giant penguins, everybody. And they're so cute. It's like waddling around, and I'm just like, oh, this is like my favorite area anyway. But you're gonna put penguins there? I love it. I'm just gonna stay here forever. But yeah, there's some really difficult ones as well. Another one that I love that's a little bit hard to find. It's called the paper airship, and it's literally just a paper airplane flying around the lands of ice.
Yeah, I think I almost got it, and then I lost it, and I was like, wait, the discoveries move? And that's when I realized discoveries move.
I've said this long. There you go then. You were not listening last time because I said that.
This had already happened before we recorded the last one.
Excuses. It's fine. It's fine. Yeah. Two infamous ones are the flutterflies and the wanderbirds. They like the flutterflies in particular. I think their flight pattern spans the entire width of the map.
Yeah,
so it's like slightly north of Sailor's Island, and you just have to go above the clouds. And either you can save and restart and it'll respawn them somewhere nearby, or you just sit and wait there for what could be half an hour.
I got lucky. I actually got them, and then I ran into them 2 more times then.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, that sounds about right for you, considering how many moonberries you got. But yeah. Another one that I love that is also the Wanderbirds, that's similar. I think they fly the whole breadth of Yafitoma, and you have to like sit at the very top of Mount Kazai and wait for them to fly over you. But yeah, some of the moving ones are my favorite, like the Skytrain as well. I think one of the wreck ships is called the Flying Dutchman, which is a little bit fun. And the last one I want to bring up, which is a really silly one, well, not silly, it's kind of cool, is the Ancient Palace, which is in Valor. And it kind of like shines a light on like a lot of what Valor used to be, because you know, Valor itself, not the town, but like the area is so like dingy and like because it's in perpetual darkness, like it's just completely like barren. But there's this like mansion that's by a lake, which for the record there is no lake because it's dried up. There's no water in that lake. And there's like lore or like people in Valor, there's like local myth that wizards there and live there and torture people, and I'm like, I want to know more about this. So there's like really interesting things that just feed you a little bit into like Arcadia's history, and I think it's cool that not a lot of people talk about it, or if they do, like they mention it very briefly, or like it genuinely feels like this is a world you're discovering. I just think it's so cool that like you're kind of finding that world's history and digging out like the discoveries is like with the crew, it's my favorite part of the game. Like I almost always go for all of them, even if it is a pain to get some of them, but I love getting them before Domingo gets them, so I get more money, which is hard to do. Unless you're like doing them sequentially, it's almost impossible to do. But yeah, it's just a really fun thing, and I cannot think. I think we used Xenoblade, didn't we? Really, last time as an example. Like Xenoblade has like interest points that you get like experience points for, and you can warp to and things like that. And it's like one of the only other games I think that does this kind of thing. But it's just super fun, especially when you get all of those like increased mobility options, because going above the sky means no random encounters, and that's great.
Yay.
But then the video game remembers that there's 3 more moons left to do, and we go to the Ice Kingdom, and this feels like a little bit rushed. I feel like I mean, I love the Ice Kingdom so much. Like ice is my favorite element, and I love Glacier a ton, and I love the idea. Again, this is like one of the only times where you get a real good insight into like the history of Arcadia via the plot. It's like these wizards lived under the ice, and they built buildings that were like icicles, and you can go back under the lands of ice after you get like the below the deep sky sailing, and you see them all sticking out of the like ice, and it's one of the coolest things ever. And the dungeon itself is easy. You have to like answer some quiz questions to get in there, because you know the Ice Kingdom is all about knowledge. And so they just ask you like random questions like, what color is the moon for ice, or something like that. And it's like I'm literally like I could stick my head out and look, but you know. But yeah, and then you get there, and it's like this really misty place that uncovers, and this is like maybe my favorite dungeon design in anything ever. Even like I mean like visually, like I don't mean like the layout because it's just kind of boring, but like the idea that like these like icicle buildings are hanging there, I'm like totally impractical. Do I love it? Yes, I do. Does this have the saddest plot moment in the game? Yes, it does.
Sure does.
Oh, so we're not really like there's not a lot of talk about the purple gigas. And as a kid, and even like until like maybe 10 years ago, I never really added up. Like it never felt obvious to me that Racnum was Plergoth, like the purple gigas. And yeah, you get to the end of the dungeon, and you find Drachma there. And obviously Drachma went off to chase after Racnum, and Racnum is there, wounded and dying. And this is like on top of like Drachma's story about his son Jack. We kind of like skipped over it last week, but Drachma, I don't know if anyone else wants to go into Drachma's story actually before I can stop talking.
He lost his son and vessel crew to Racnum.
That's right,
Yes.
and his arm as well. Yeah.
Oh yes.
Yeah. And he'd been chasing after him, and then like obviously the harpoon cannon, he got to take him down, and he managed to do it, but he was dragged into the glacier or the ruins of ice, and he stayed with him until he died. Like it's a really touching moment, because you think like Drachma's whole purpose has been to like avenge his crew and avenge his son. And then he just feels sorry for Plergoth at this point. It's like, it's really, really beautiful, actually, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's, like I said to you, like it shows like a level of maturity that most of the cast lacks. And
I agree.
Empathy, which is, makes sense. He's old and they're young. So I can buy that. But yeah, I mean, I think that I think it's maybe like the only moment of like real pathos in the whole game.
Oh yeah.
And it is appropriate to everything that you know about Drachma, like the even like the moment which I might have when I was younger thought was over the top of like Racnum like crying as it's dying is really touching and moving, and that idea of Drachma is sort of a caretaker, and like he wasn't able to take care of his son, but he's able to take care of this creature. I thought was really lovely. I thought the dungeon in general was too, but I was like, wait a second, I just got here. Why am I leaving already?
Yeah, I always the Lands of Ice, and like I mean I understand why going to Valor and the Maw of Tartarus is really short, because you've been to Valor so many times at this point that it's like you don't really need to dwell on it anymore. But yeah, like the Lands of Ice are literally like you go, you do the dungeon, you go again. But like the other part of Plergoth is that, like they said, didn't they? Or Fina says that it's just a normal arc whale that the people of the Purple Kingdom put a crystal into. So Racnam's probably been in pain. I'm switching between the two names for what, thousands of years? Like that's why he doesn't stay in stasis. He's just flying around the whole time because he's overtaken by this like magic of this crystal and can't control it. And none of it was his fault, basically. It's really sad. And yeah, as a kid, I was always like, I don't really care because, like, I didn't like Drachma because, like, why? But now, like, as I'm older, I know. Don't worry, young me was stupid. It's fine. We acknowledge that, like, young me deserved not to appreciate. Well, I was going to say something. I was like, deserve not to appreciate this game. That doesn't make sense. Young me was wrong about Drachma. Like, older me is right about Drachma because, like, I like look up to Drachma and I'm like, yeah, I feel really sorry for you. And like Zach said, this is pretty much the only moment of pathos in the game I think that like pays off as well. Like, yeah, it's a really, really lovely moment. And like the Lands of Ice, it feels like a shame that like that entire section of the game is so like swept under a little bit. It's just like, yes, this is like its own section and you're never going to find out anything about it. It makes sense given that that civilization got wiped out by the rains because they were all out fighting it. But it would have been really interesting in like even a moment of like if the civilization had lasted and they'd like got descendants, seeing them like trying to make reparations for maybe what their ancestors did to the arc whales, because you know that's like interfering with nature, like, and even like burying the gigas or something like that, because yeah, the rest of them are just like almost like not mechanical, but there's like something, I can't think of a right way to put it, but like not plastic, but there's something definitely artificial about the rest of them. Whereas Racnam is just straight up a arc whale that they stuck a gem into and it's like magic. But yeah, second ship dungeon time now though, which yay, more of Tartarus. And Yelagar as well, which is like a spider, scorpion thing. I don't know. Again, like it does like 3,000 damage a hit and it's fine. But around this time, you find out that Enrique is planning to go back home because he thinks he's done enough to convince his mother to stop. Like he thinks he's learnt enough about the world, and obviously now Moegi's with you on the crew, and he's like, no, I want to convince her that she's doing the wrong thing. And so after you do Yelagar, he goes and you go to Dangrel Island to, or is it after Dangrel Island? Someone might have to remind me.
He leaves a little bit later than this. It's
Oh.
after the Reigns of Destruction is when he leaves.
Oh shoot, yeah, you're right. He does. They do the Reigns of Destruction on. Well, no, because he's in Valor when the Reigns of Destruction go off. Because he nearly dies. Everyone thinks he's dead, right?
That is. Yes, that's true, but maybe I'm wrong. I could be misremembering.
No, don't worry. Yeah, I think you're right though. I think they do summon one as an example, don't they? They do it as like in an area, and he's like, "No, I've got to go because I need to tell my mother to go." That's right. They want to evacuate, and then he decides to go back. I think it's after the Deep Sky.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, so you do a number of different things, but you go down to Dangrel Island to find out. You will get the lower engine to go and get Fina's airship, because this is the next thing you want to do is like, because you've got all the other moon crystals, they're like, well, where's the silver moon crystal? And Fina's like, well, we're going to have to go to my home, which is on the moon or by the moon. And you go and retrieve her ship. Dangrel Island is okay. And you have to fight Vigoro again, which again is easy. Also, world's longest elevator, right? Like, game likes like big ladders and big elevators, doesn't it?
I mean, the elevators come a bit later, but yeah, yeah. I mean, this is also the moment where what's his name?
Gregorio, yeah.
Gregorio.
Yep.
Because Galcian attacks you there, and Gregorio, because we skipped over this a little bit, but Galcian very recently had said to everybody of Valois that he was going to, or the admirals or whatever, that he was going to just basically take over. And Gregorio steps in to save you in that situation, which is a really lovely moment. Like this, the way he talks about that, and it also does a good job of indicating the power of Galcian too. I always like in games when they make an effort to show you how powerful a character is. And I think they do a nice job with that.
Yeah, and I think actually now that you say it, now that I remember, I think it is actually Gregorio's death that kind of prompts Enrique to go. Now that I think about it, a mix of that and the rains, he's like, no, I can't like lose anyone else in my family, kind of thing.
Right. Well, because he discovers Galcian's plot, and so that's when he decides to go back.
Yeah, to tell his mother, and then there's that whole moment where like Enrique goes there, and Bellezza is also there as well, and she like tries to fake out of it, but she's like double bluffing, and she like knocks Enrique out and escapes with him. And then she like joins up with him, and they try and escape, which I think is a cool moment because she's trying to help you out. But yeah, so you get the ship parts to make a deep engine, so you can go and get her ship. Oh, does anyone actually do Deep Sky without a map? Like,
no,
certainly not.
As soon as they explained it to me, I was like, I'm not doing that. And then I was like, oh, there are items I need too. Okay, great. And then I was in and out of there in like 3 minutes, and it was delightful.
So you have to like sonar the ground to get like Fina's ship. But if you do it, and then you can like use a crane to pull out an item from the bottom. But if it's not the right thing, you're just wasting like, what is it, like a 20-second animation of the crane going in?
Also, like if you use 10, you have to reset.
Oh yeah, it's only got enough energy to do 10, hasn't it?
Yep.
Yeah, not my favorite moment. So yeah,
it didn't bother me at all because I just cheated.
Luckily, like 12-year-old me had a printer and printed out like a little map that's got like specifically like every grid like colored in, and then like all the ones are black, don't touch, and then it's got the 2 yellow grids, which is for the Valorium, which you use to make Vice's second best weapon on the GameCube.
Yes.
And then the other one for Fina's ship. And the minute you get Fina's ship, you can never come back here. So if you don't get the Valorium first, you can fail and you'll never get the ultimate weapon, which you also need to get for 100% completion, and to do the secret boss. But you get to satisfyingly blast a Loco to death and make sure he sinks under the sea where he kind of belongs. I don't like DeLoco. He freaks me out and is weird and just
got major incel energy for sure.
Major incel energy indeed.
Absolutely.
Yes.
But then eventually you do get to go to the moon, but not before Ramirez destroys your village. Sephiroth moment part 2. But I think this is really interesting because like it's an indication of like, again, I guess his power, but also like, it's at this moment that it's revealed that like every person of the Silver Civilization has a piece of the crystal inside them. So he tries to take it out of Fina, and then he can't because I think they just overpower him a little bit. But there's a real moment like the next morning where everyone like comes together to rebuild the island, which I really love. I think that's a really cool moment, especially because it's like you feel like a bit of an attachment to the island at this point, because you as yourself have been building out with the crew and stuff like that. So to see everybody else like putting the effort into it, I think is really cool. Especially the bit where Ursula or Ulala is like chasing after the chickens, and yes. I find that's really cute.
Lawrence is too.
Oh yeah,
Lawrence is like, why were these chickens get? Like, I can't chase them all. And I'm like, oh, Lawrence, my boy. It was so good.
I paid you 100,000 gil, Lawrence, and you can't even chase a chicken. Or 10,000, I don't remember how much it is. But yeah, you get to go to the moon, which is fun. I love this bit. This is so like, I remember being like, oh my god, as a kid, like the weird controls, the way that it goes upside down, the fact that the floor goes tink 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 every time you move, and it's just cool. Pain in the ass to get all the treasure chests and everything, but like,
hey, if you get lost, you find all the treasure chests. Don't worry.
Oh,
and that's what I did.
Yeah, don't worry. But yeah, it's such a weird moment for the game, and like, it's definitely I don't know. You obviously expect it at this point, I think, and it makes sense being a silver civilization that they would be up in the moon. But then you find out like all of the implications of the silver civilization. Like, why is there no silver moon? There is a silver moon. Why is there no silver kingdom on Arcadia? Well, because they're all up in the sky, and they're the people who called the rains of destruction down in the first place. Everybody. So, Fina's technically been the bad person all along, but she's never really believed in that idea. Because
Well, she wasn't aware of it.
She wasn't aware of it.
They lied
That's
to her
right.
about it.
Yeah,
Ramirez was the one who first said something about it in the previous sequence.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, and he found out about it, and I think that's why he kind of defected in the end, isn't it? He like,
Well, the reason that Ramirez defects, according to the side quest, is that like some admiral, he was like saying like he didn't like the way they were treating people in Ixataka, and he says it in front of Galcian, like, oh, this admiral told me they were going to fix it, and Galcian
That's
laughs
right.
at him about it, and then the admiral doesn't do what he said he's going to do. So then he decides he's going to enslave everyone instead. It's very logical.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, that's Ramirez's JRPG backstory.
Yeah, I remember that now. It's not not
Honestly, I'd
perfect.
rather than just give him no backstory at all. Just make him a megalomaniac. Because Galcian, I think, is a better villain for that reason.
Mhm.
Like he's just a megalomaniac because he is. And so I'm like, okay, cool. I could get behind some Kefka energy here. But like Ramirez, like they're trying to make him into something that he's clearly not meant to be.
Right, exactly. Yeah, he's I like him, but yeah, I definitely hate the Silver Civilization. Maybe a little bit more than anyone else. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe not as much as Galcian, because Galcian is just like power hungry and bloodthirsty.
I mean, I don't really understand how they're. I guess that the argument, because like what they're trying to do is create a second reign of destruction. That's why
Yeah.
they sent Ramirez and Fina down to do it, because the reason they did it the first time was that society sucked so bad, and like the backstory they tell about how bad society sucks for the first reign of destruction is like sounds pretty rough. Like the reason the Gigas existed was basically to like take power from other kingdoms, and like people were just dying in swaths, and maybe just like it's them telling the story, right? So it sounds bad. And maybe that's what they see Valoa as, and they're trying to get rid of Valoa, I guess. And like they're seeing them as like the evil force in the world. I don't know. Like at least they have a reason. Like I don't agree with it, but at least they have a reason.
Exactly. Yeah. But Fina like pushes against it at least because, you know,
she's a good person.
She's a good person. Yeah, Fina's like, we didn't really talk about Fina much last time, did we? So if we touch on her a little bit now, because this is kind of the end of her arc a little bit. She kind of reaches the point where she's like, well, actually, I say that. She does get a cool pirate outfit post credits, doesn't she? Or Cupel gets an eye patch.
Oh yeah,
you just beat this
a screenshot of that. I know.
I should sure hope you would.
I forget things quickly. It was very cool.
It's fine. Yeah. But yeah, Fina, I like Fina a lot. I think she like fits her role perfectly. But I don't know whether anyone else has got like any feelings about Fina in particular. She's cute.
I like Fina.
I like her.
I like Ica better. I like Baletza way better. But she's fine. She's kind of there. I mean, like she's nice. She doesn't have. I feel like she doesn't get a lot of actual character development. She mostly gets a lot of plot development, which is fine.
Yes.
For a character who you're not with the entire game. I just feel like I just don't feel like I knew her as well as I knew Ica in particular. Ica, who I just like had a bigger personality, I guess. But I mean, I like Fina. She was definitely the least useful party member.
I like the way
guarding. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. I like the way she interacted with the other characters. That was about.
Yeah.
That's fair enough.
She's definitely like, no, I agree with you. Like, she is definitely developed by the plot, and like she is the driving force of the plot anyway, isn't she? Because like you're going on this journey because of her. Like she wants you to do this, so you're doing it, and that's where her kind of purpose begins and ends. Like she's just going around to get the moon crystals and stuff, and this is like really her only moment of like that. Apart from the moment where the game's like, do you want to date Ica or do you want to date Fina? I'm like, I don't want to date either of them. Like they're just friends. Like why? What is this game? What is RPG's obsessions with making me want to date one of them? I mean, obviously Ica and Vice are like pretty good for each other, but also I just no. But yeah, she's fine. I think I agree with that. Yeah, I don't know if Wes, if you've got any like strong feelings.
Yeah, I always feel like she's more an element of the plot than a character in her own right. And when you've got a cast with so many big personalities, she gets drowned out pretty easily. The little moments that she does have tend to be pretty good, but they're just kind of few and far between, and they're not as pronounced as everyone else's big moments.
Mm-hmm. She brings Cupid to the party, though, and I feel like that's like more than
that's
enough.
fair.
That's worth some
That's fair.
points.
That's
Yeah.
worth many points, I would say. Yeah. So you leave the shrine, and then after your island's rebuilt, you get a bunch of.
Well, it's important to mention before you leave the shrine that Ramirez
Oh.
and Galcian show up,
Oh,
and they
yes.
actually kill the Elder, and that's where they get the silver crystal from.
That's right. They do that, and that's not really ideal because here comes the Reigns of Destruction for real. And yeah, so you go back and you get this really cool moment where like, well, Vice is almost gonna like give up essentially. And then like everybody starts coming back, like Enrique's not dead. They do call down the Reigns of Destruction on Valor specifically. And this is where Theodora and Alfonso get squashed. Kind of like, I don't think it's meant to be funny, but it's just like one big block. And I'm like, all right. But yeah, you think that Enrique and Bellezza are dead as well, or everybody does. They're not, because they just managed to get out in time, and they turn up at your base, and Moegi's like very happy because Enrique's not dead, and everybody comes
Yay.
together. It's this really cool moment where like every single like group that you've ever met, so like you've got Hans's like father come back, and you've got like the Tenko army, you've got Baltor, and you've got like Vice's father and like the rest of the Blue Rogues and Gilda's ship and the crew and Clara and everybody, and it's just this really, really cool moment of everyone coming together. And then you get this really big you go back to Dongrel Island at some point as well, don't you, to find out the Hydra, or like the ship, something about the fortress, the Hydra being built, which is when the lift like collapses because you're trying to stop them from raising the continent with the moon crystals. And that's right before the Reigns of Destruction are called. And that's where oh god, the lift collapses, and then see, this is why I should have replayed most of this, because I'm just like,
No, the lift collapses, and then you try to get into Soltis, and you can't because they have like a big giant force field around it, and they're like, well, we can't get into this, we're screwed. And so then they go back to Crescent Island to regroup, and then Vice is all emo sad boy for a minute, and then that's when everybody shows up.
yeah, exactly. So I got things in the wrong order. I'm really sorry.
That's no big deal.
But like, yeah, I think that moment is cool. And then you
It's lovely.
I think that moment is amazing. And then
Friendship is the real treasure.
Friendship is the real treasure. And I love the sequence of fights afterwards. I love the fact that you just fight like army ship after army ship after army ship, and then it's the Hydra. As the kid, the Hydra was the hardest thing in the world to me. It's really easy now, but it's such a cool fight. I love the spectacle of it. I love how big it is. It's like the first thing you fought that's massively bigger than the Delphinus for a while. Like, Yelagar is a little bit bigger than your ship, but like, and Blue Aims are pretty small then. Gigas. If you'd fought Rachnum, one, I would have felt bad, and two, it's massive. But yeah, the Hydra like genuinely feels imposing and kind of lives up to its reputation if you don't spend shed loads of money on cannons and wax and grease and things, and you know. But it's a very cool fight, I think. What does everyone think of the Hydra fight?
I think that whole sequence is very cool, and just like the idea of like all these different armadas sort of around you to attack, you know, the one big Galcian armada, is very, very cool. And yeah, the Hydra fight, like I like the attack animations that the Hydra has. I think those are really cool. I think the very last one is even cooler, but I like that was, I think the Hydra was probably tougher than actually the very last one.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, I just like the idea of it, and like you're so overpowered at that point that it's not an issue as long as you have some complete kits and some Apo waxes.
Yeah,
like you're gonna be fine. But yeah, I mean, I think that the whole sequence is good, and you totally skipped over the night before sequence. We get in night before sequence,
yeah,
which I know you want to skip over.
Yes,
you can try if you want, but it's still there.
Oh, I'm trying to like skip over some things, and I'm like, yeah, I mean, I wish that they'd stop. Like, Vice is like, yeah, okay, Vice is a little bit attractive, but Bellezza's probably like mid-20s. We were trying to work this out earlier. But Bellezza definitely like has a thing for him. Although maybe,
but she's got a bigger thing for someone else.
Yeah,
which is very strange.
Oh, I hate this plot device so much. Like,
There's no reason for her to have a romantic interest in Galcian.
Right?
There's none.
It's none. It's just like, because she recognizes that he's not good, but she's still
Right.
like, I love him. I'm like, no. I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's such a badass too. I mean, like, why? Like, why would you do that?
Yeah, why would
she's
you?
so cool.
I know. Yeah, which unfortunately, like, I mean, like, eventually you do fight Galcian 4-on-1, which I think is a really cool fight. If again you're not overpowered, but like, how long is that attack animation that he does? Like,
I had it on 2x speed at that point, and I think it still took a good 45 to 50 seconds.
And like, if you do that fight normally, he'll do it like, I've had fights where he does it like 4 times in a row, and I'm just like, do you know what? I'm just gonna make a cup of tea. It's fine. I'm gonna disappear for a bit. But it's a good fight, I think, because like, if it's one of the harder ones if you're not like really prepared for it. And the Hydra, I would say the Hydra is the hardest fight after Recumen for sure. Like, ship wise, like, I don't think anything else comes close to those 2 fights. But yeah, and then after you beat Galcian, well, you don't really beat him because he gets away in his escape pod. But Letza does the worst thing she could do, and she crashes into it because she's like, if I'm gonna die, I'll take him with me, kind of thing. Or she's willing to sacrifice herself basically because it means she'll be with him in a way, but also saving the world as well. And I hate that. I utterly hate that for her.
Yeah, it's pretty rough.
It's awful.
I don't appreciate that moment in the plot at all.
That's cool. Let's let the girl die for the person she loves, who's an absolute bastard. But yeah. So now I skipped over the fact that Soltis is absolutely Atlantis, but there you go. But my favorite thing about Soltis is, as a dungeon, it's okay. It looks very samey, but I love the fact, and I'd never thought about this a long time ago. I'd said like the silver crystal like represents beginnings and ends, or life and death, and I think it's really interesting. And again, maybe this is me thinking about this video game far too much through the last 21 years of my life. That you start on Shrine Island and you end on Shrine Island. So you end at the beginning, basically. So it's like the whole moon crystal thing. See, look, everyone's gone silent again. This is me, like...
Actually, I hadn't reached that part yet, so that makes a lot of sense.
I feel like there's a YouTube video that you should make about this, Alana.
No! This is not like quite like Charlie Always Sunny Persona 2 level, but like, I do feel like that there is something there in that the whole game ends where you begin. I do think that's really cool though, that you go to like Shrine Island and you're like right at the beginning and you're like totally oblivious of like anything about the Silver Civilization up until that point.
Yeah.
And
when I was there, the first time I was playing it with you, you were like, oh, there's a reason it's called that. I was like, what are you even talking about? And then I got there and I was like, oh, okay.
It's almost like I've played this game 10 times. Oh yeah, I do think it's really cool. But yeah, I think it's fun that comes up. And like, it's funny how like the first couple of times I played the game, like I don't think I'd ever realized the silver moon was there at all, like in the sky. And it's only when you have the Delphinus that you actually notice the music changes when you're in that area. Like the harps come in, don't they, around when you're around like Soltis and the kind of general silver area, which is where Pirate Island is and things like that.
I did not notice that.
Yeah, because you now get like the music changing with the Ice Kingdom, because the Little Jack doesn't have a variation with that, which is like, I don't know, xylophone, I guess, or bells. And then you get the Afitoma one, which is definitely koto strings and any kind of percussion instruments that they use. But yeah, it's cool. But obviously, as we're kind of approaching the end of the game, I want to jump into a couple of the other optional things that we've not really talked about. One of those is something we've referred to a few times, I guess, the moonfish. And these moonfish are connected to another side quest that was added in the Dreamcast version, which is Piastol, which is the Angel of Death, which is definitely a flavor of emo Japanese RPG that...
I love the Piastol stuff. I think it's really, really well done. I think the fights, I actually think the Piastol fights, I mean, like eventually they become the same thing over and over again, where it's like you put up Delta Shield so she can't insta-kill you. You put up Justice Shield if you have it so she can't kill you fast. And then you just wait to get Pirate's Wrath, and then you hit the dog's dead. and then you kill her. I mean, like it kind of becomes the same. But I thought early on it was like a good challenge to teach you the intricacies of the battle system, because like I think I was playing it in front of you. I was like, she just keeps killing me. I don't understand how to beat this. And you're like, maybe use Delta Shield. It's like, oh, and like it kind of forces you to engage with the combat, which a lot of the normal game probably doesn't. I was kind of using those strategies on normal fights, and they were maybe very easy because of that. But I thought that was cool, and like how you sort of slowly get the story of why she's trying to attack you is really cool, and the idea that the moonfish and Piastel are connected is something you never would have guessed, right?
Right, yeah,
that she thinks that you attacked her early, but you didn't, and her little sister's the one you've been helping this whole time.
Yeah, they're both like Valuan kids, aren't they? Like,
yeah,
nobles.
Yeah, that's also where they introduced the crappy Ramirez backstory too. But besides that, like I thought that like the development of that story over time was really cool, and the fights were challenging and fun. And every time I got a black spot, I was excited for like a new challenge.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was something that made me on the GameCube version engage with the combat and the mechanics way more than I ever had like throughout the entirety of playing through the Dreamcast version.
Mm-hmm.
Because it taught me some of those lessons earlier on. Before I was so overpowered, I didn't need to engage with the combat system anymore. So I was actually able to like be a little bit more thoughtful throughout the rest of the game thanks to those. And I think it's great to have them in there as actual road speed bumps for people.
I agree. Yeah, I think she's really. I used to find her really challenging. Like, I think her fourth phase is maybe not too bad, but like I think it's either a second or a third was the one I always would struggle with the most. Because at that point, like, there's quite a big gap where you can't like travel back to Sailor's Island. I think it's the Afitoma break, and like when you go back to Crescent Island, you've probably gone up like 6 levels. And one of the things the super boss in this game do is they rubber band with you. So like if you're like level 40 and you go and fight Piastel's first form, she will hit as hard as her if you fought her level 4 fight at that level. So like it doesn't matter, like you can over level certainly and overpower, but like you can certainly not, like, there's always a little bit of a challenge there, I think, even if you like, she's going to just hit harder and you've just got to like kill her quicker basically.
I mean, the thing that helps with the later fights is that you just have more spirit points to start and you build them faster. I mean, that's really what this game really boils down to, like how many spirit points do I have? And so that's why I think those later fights get easier. But when like you're really managing them, and like one death really can cause you major problems early in the game, that's why I think those are more challenging. So I think that like the rubber banding thing probably matters to some degree, but I think that if I were to fight those things later with more spirit points, it doesn't matter that she hits harder because I can just hit her more and a lot harder, a lot faster. So yeah, I think doing them when they're current it felt like an appropriate challenge, especially early on.
Yeah, and you don't have like an endless pool of money from getting like discoveries that are worth like 50 grand, so you can't just pile them into like Piranta seeds or glyphs of might and speed and stuff like that. So yeah, but yeah, obviously it's linked to the Moonfish quest, which is I like collectible side quests, so I'm always like not fussed with things like that. I do think like the Hamuchu, the little bird, which is like the mascot of this game. Did anyone find Hamuchu Island, by the way?
I did not.
I hope Wes knows what I'm talking about.
Not this go around, but yes, yes, I have in the before times.
Yes, Hamuchu Island is like.
You mean like the bird island with like that old man bird?
Yes.
Oh yeah, I found that. Yeah, I found that.
It's where you get all your stats. So it's how you find out how close you are to 100%. But yeah, it's also a little bit weird that there's a man in a Hamuchu suit. But yeah, like the Hamuchu that you're feeding Moonfish to, why does it cough up furballs, first of all? And secondly, why does it get so ugly so quickly? Like, it's just a little blob to start off with, and then he just gets like, I don't know, like, it is kind of cute in a way. I think
he's kind of giant and hideous, but let's be honest.
But he's the 89th discovery, or the 88th discovery. If you give him all the Moonfish and complete the Piastel quests, Hamuchu becomes the final discovery, which I think is kind of fun. But yeah, I'll tell you another thing that, like, we were talking about, like appropriate challenges, and another addition to the GameCube version of the bounty fights. Now these, I love. I love them.
Mhm.
I love super bosses. I love hard fights as long as they're manageable. And I think all of these are. Again, does anyone have a favorite or one that they found really challenging?
I can't remember what it was called, but like one of the first ones. It was before I really understood the battle system. Where like you find them on a pier. I cannot remember the name. Gordo, maybe. I thought that one was really challenging. The Ixinus demons I thought were just cool. And
Yes, I like
those
them.
Mm-hmm.
I thought were a fair challenge. And I thought all of them were unique and presented their own difficulties. But again, like the only issue I had with this game's combat by the end is that it became like literally do exactly the same thing over and over again. And that is what will allow you to win.
Victory is yours.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so just like put up Justice Shield, put up Delta Shield, wait to build up Spirit Points, put Incrum on Vice, hit Pirate's Wrath when you can. The end. So I kind of wish that more of them had done more status effect stuff. But the ones that did, I thought were a little more challenging, but they still weren't too bad.
Yeah. I think the one you're thinking of might be Loose Cannon Lapin, the one with the robot. On the
Yes, that
pier
is
at
correct.
Sailor's Island. Yeah, that one's never given me a problem, but I have certainly heard of it giving a lot of other people a problem. Yeah.
I have unironic love for your imposters, Vice the Legend, because I always love P2 palette swaps. For some reason, this has always been something that I've loved in like arcade games as a kid, and anytime I see something like that integrated into a story-driven game, just delights me.
It's so good. It's such a like twist, and interestingly enough, this is the one that always used to get me as a kid. Like it's always been the hardest one for me out of all of them, and I think it's because I always used to do it too late, and it was before the point where I had tons of money, and I'm good enough at the game, but like I'd always get really unlucky with like drill nos and status effects and things like that, and I'd just be like, oh, I'm gonna have to reset everything and do that and do that and do that and things like that. I always just got really unlucky. Yeah, I think it's fun that like I think I've mentioned the swashbuckler rating system, have I? You get like different pirate rankings throughout the game depending on what point you are in the plot and how many discoveries you've got. And at one point randomly, I think it's after you get the Delphinus or after Yaphatoma, it just tanks like deliberately. You're called Vice the Imposter, and that's because there's these people going around pretending to be you,
I
and
just can't
they've
believe the
like
game doesn't even
basically
tell
like
you that it happens.
no, I know.
Like the
I
way that
mean,
I
there's a
found out was I went to
suggestion,
go
'cause if you're
talk to one of my
going-
merchants, and they're like, I'm not talking to you. I'm like, well, you literally work on my island. What are you talking about? You're not talking to me. And I was like, oh.
I think that's really interesting though. Like, I mean, it doesn't tell you too much about the swashbuckler system anyway, but I like the way that like people acknowledge your title. Like the way I think I usually find out is because I go to a sailors guild to sell some stuff, and the sailors guild person's like, keep your head down, kind of thing. Like, I won't tell anyone you were in here or something like that. And you're like, oh wait, what? And you look at the wanted board and you're like, what? But yeah, I think that's a fun fight. For me, I sometimes find Daikakoya a little bit rough, especially if he does Golden Flurry a few times. As demonstrated very aptly this morning when he did it 4 times in a row. And confused Ica and Enrique every time. And I was like, well, I can't do Justice Shield, can't do Delta Shield. Now Fina's dead. And now this, and then you've got like, and then all the enemies have got quicker on them, and it's like, okay, now I've got to do Lunar Cleansing when I revive Fina and stuff like that. It's not too bad. It's definitely not the worst one. And Rupee's the other one that I used to find really hard. But again, if you do Rupee when you first get Rupee available, it's not too bad. But if you leave it until a lot later, like they get like additional moves which do more damage, and it's like, okay. I do like that all of the bounty fights have got like really goofy stories, because like Rupee, you're like, oh, he's like the leader of a clan, but actually he's this like tiny little kid. And then he's like, I'm going to open a carpet shop. I'm like, good for you. Like, good for you. And then like the Vice imposter trio, they join like, they're like a impersonation group, don't they? And you get like joke weapons from them. You get the Swalmerang, which is just a giant lollipop for Ica, which I think is really fun. But yeah, I do really love those fights. Although I must admit, the very last bounty fight is so disappointing. Like,
Yeah.
it's so easy. And I think like there's this like gimmick that we didn't touch on last episode, all the treasure chests, or many of them, have like a person in them called Zivil and Bane, and they're basically trying to steal artifacts, and those artifacts you sell for money. And then you fight the final bounty as like their leader. But it's a piece of cake. It's like so easy every time. I'm so surprised every time. I'm like, oh, you're a breeze.
Yeah, I couldn't even do like my normal. I could have, but I chose to take Drachma into the final dungeon, and I didn't even need Justice Shield. So I was like, all right, fine.
Yep.
I just used his spirit boost and then used prophecy, wiped them all out, and then one hit of Pirate's Wrath, he was gone. Done.
Yeah.
It was like 3 turns.
It's a shame because, like, I think it's a really fun idea that there's like this group of like treasure hunters that have got like this secret leader, and they're going around trying to steal artifacts for themselves to make money from, which then you go and do. It's like, okay, all right, who's the good person here? But yeah, it's quite disappointing, I think, especially after like, I think most of the other ones present some sort of challenge apart from Gordo and Baltor, who are both like mandatory fights in the story anyway, and were in the original Dreamcast version. You just didn't have a bounty attached to them. The very last side quest we haven't talked about is actually recruiting crew members. So you get 22 crew members. There's 11 positions on the ship, and you can swap them in and out as you see fit. Some specialize in magic or physical attacks, and some specialize in cooking for HP regeneration, and some for status effects. But it's really fun to go around and recruit them. They've all got different different parameters. Does anyone have a favorite crew member that they like to have?
I liked Ulara.
Yeah, the cook.
Yeah.
She's adorable. I love Ulara. And her sister Kerala joins you as well because she's one of the builders as well. Yeah, I like her a lot.
I like from a design stance Merida, but I didn't use her too often.
Merida has the unfortunate job of, I like Merida's design and I think she's really cool, but she's the jester, and unfortunately the other jester of the Delphinus is Pow, and I'm sorry.
There's
Pow
top of my
Yeah.
list.
Pow is gonna
Pow
win
is-
every
Pow's a
time.
good boy.
Pow is the best. Little purple doggy. I mean, come on.
As a youngin, I loved Lawrence because that design just oozed cool.
I still love Lawrence.
It's
on
still very
Arcadia.
good.
He's so good. As soon as I met him, Alana's like, "Hey, you get to recruit him," and I'm like, "Yes, I will do it immediately," and I did. I
Gonna
never
sit
took him
at
off
the
my
helm.
crew.
I like the way that, like, when you go and talk to him on Crescent Island towards the end of the game, he's like, my contract's nearly up, right? And he's like, oh yeah, we paid you, didn't we? You're not really a crew member. But yeah, he's like, he tries to think he doesn't care, but he totally does. Yeah, he's definitely my favorite of the 2 navigators. I agree. Yeah.
It's an old trope, but it checks out, you know?
Oh yeah, definitely.
I'm a Squall defender until I die.
I like Squall too, actually. Gunbreaker main here. Of course I like Squall.
Fantastic. And in the Blue Rogue's attack, he's got that cool sword and everything. Come on.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I love
used it once just for that reason.
Yeah, this game loves over-the-top animations, and Blue Rogues is worth, like, Prophecy is better in every way, and that's gotten, like, a massive, like, oh my god, the moon is going to hit the planet and destroy this tiny little human being that I just can't get rid of. But then, like, Blue Rogues has got, like, all 11 crew members who you've currently got active, like, doing their things, and it's like, Power just runs around the screen and barks, and Ulara, like, lifts up a, like, tray of rice, and Don is like drinks some loqua juice, and then Robinson like burps out fire. It's very cool. And this game also has my favorite like call outs for like spells and animations. Like, I still love you mess with me, you mess with Claudia, and then like Gilda's like ship just flies in, and I'm like, oh, you're just gonna bomb everybody. Okay. It's so over the top and so 2000s. It's great. But I like both the artisans for the crew, which is Ilkemis, who is the chemist, and Ryukan, the blacksmith. Mostly just because I think like Ryukan is like a grumpy blacksmith, but he like makes you weapons, and he makes you the best weapon in the game as well, which I think is really cool. And he's got his own island. You have to like bring him a really powerful weapon, a very specific weapon, I think, and you show it to him, and he's like, "No, I'm going to join you." And I think that's really cool. And Ilkemis is like a chemist who lives off of Valor, and he left because they wanted him to make like weapons of mass destruction, and he was like, no, I'm not going to do that. And he joins you, and that's where you get all your super powerful seeds and your items from. So they're both really useful in different ways. So I always find it really hard to choose who I want on the front line of those two. But I think they're fun. But yeah, otherwise, so going through Soltis, you get your final confrontation with Ramirez, which we've already touched on as a very cool fight with some very cool animations.
I got to see it twice, and I was like, yes.
It's
Yes.
so good.
It's so ridiculous, but so amazing.
It's so good. Where there is light, there's darkness, right?
Yeah,
Like, a little on the
like,
nose.
yes, give it to me. This is the late 90s, early 2000s vibe that I want in a video game.
Oh yeah, it's still there. I still want it all the time. Yeah, I think that fight's really cool. There's like I think it's a good moment. And then you fight the Silver Giga Zelos, which, as a Tales of Symphonia fan, this like confuses me, but never mind. Like, it's Zelos, I think, in Japanese with an A. But this fight can be hard unless you've overpowered the Moonstone Cannon, in which case you can like skip entire phases and have like 3 arms of the boss fall off in one round. Like, but it's got some really cool animations in it, like the Hydra fight. And then you've got like the last phase, which is another normal fight where Ramirez and Zelos like fuse together to make the one-winged angel character, and then you get to fight him. This can be a pain in the backside because like he's got a move where he like puppets one of your characters and uses them against you. This can be annoying if it's Vice.
It's the only way that I saw, because he took over Drachma in the very first turn of mine. Then he had Drachma use his 25 SP move, which I never would have seen otherwise. But I was like, hey, at least I got to see that. He killed someone. He killed Ica. But I was like, that's a cool animation. And then he died like 2 turns later. But it was, I was glad I got to see it.
Yeah. Oh my god. But yeah, it can be a pain if you're not prepared for that, but otherwise it's not too bad a fight. And obviously, Ramirez dies, Soltis sinks, and the world's saved, because, everyone has to be happy in this game. Like, it's all about positivity and all about friendship. But, like, I do love that, like, Skies of Arcadia does the Suikoden thing. Again, we keep referring to Suikoden, and it shows you what all your crew members do and what they go off in the credits, which I think is super sweet. And like, some of them are really sad.
I'm such a sucker for endings like that, though. That little, what happened to everyone endings.
Yeah.
Well, I gotta see it now.
I'm not going to say anything because I know, Audra, you've got a little bit to go. But there are some really good ones. Like,
they're really lovely, but there's one that I was very, very upset about personally.
Yeah, I know which one you're upset about. It's fine. But yeah, it's such a great conclusion, I think. And then obviously post-game, you get like, Vice has got the new pirate ship, the Albatross 2, and then Fina comes out in her new little pirate ship, or new little pirate outfit even, and Cupel's got a little eye patch and a little moustache, and then they're going to go and sail off into the sunset. But yeah, that was my whistle-stop tour of Skies of Arcadia. I love this game. But yeah, something we were touching on at the beginning as we're beginning to wrap up here. We were talking about like things that we'd like to see, because I think Skies will get a port eventually. I really damn hope so, because I really want to like replay it. But like, I certainly agree with some of the things we were saying throughout. Like, I might love this game to death. Like, there's no game like I turned it on this morning for like the first time in a while, and I lost like 3 hours. And like, I don't do that very often with stuff that I go back and revisit. And I'm like, oh my god, like nothing makes me feel the same way as Skies of Arcadia. Really, like, there's just so much to it and so much attached to it for me as well, that like, it's just a really special thing. But like, because I have to be critical about things, and like, I can never turn my eye away from it. Like, there are definitely things this time around that, and like, my favorite thing about doing these kinds of things is like hearing everybody else's thoughts, because like, it really opens up my eyes to things. But before I like go off into a spiel or anything, because I was going to go into like, if this game gets a port or remaster, like, what would we really want to see? I mean, would you want a sequel as well? Would you want a remake? What would you like out of it? Basically, a new release of Skies in any way, shape, or form, because Sega will do it at some point, I hope.
I mean, I think that remaster is like a no-brainer, and that wouldn't be hard. My computer handled it just fine, so they could definitely do it. And you'd like pull in that Dreamcast music.
Yeah.
keep all the side quests, maybe tighten up the graphics a little bit, maybe lower the encounter rate a little bit.
Maybe fix the camera angle.
Yeah.
Make the camera a little bit easier to use. Add a speed up function. Oh my, add a speed up function. And you could pretty much just release the game as is with some like pretty minor adjustments. It wouldn't even cost them that much, and they would make a ton of money on it. So it's very confusing to me that they haven't done it yet.
I think the encounter rate's the only thing that's a hard sell for modern audiences, like a deal breaker kind of sell for modern audiences. Everything else I think is workable, even though they can definitely sand off some edges.
Yeah, like a slider or something would be good, or yeah, I like the brave. Like I feel like Bravely Default has spoiled a lot of people, but it's a good thing, like in a good way.
The Sega Ages version of Phantasy Star 1 has an easy mode, and all it does is it lowers the random encounter rate and makes each of those encounters give you more experience and gold. It's just like
Oh.
the lever goes up, the other lever goes down in kind of equal measure, and that made that game so much easier to get through, in a modern era. And I think something like that for Skies of Arcadia would totally work.
I mean, you don't even really need to. You could just lower the encounter rate. You could actually leave the experience curve the same, and it would be fine.
Probably.
Yeah. So yeah, I understand. I have messed around with that version, and I think it's very cool.
Actually, I think an anime adaptation one day would be good too.
Don't say that. Don't say that. Don't put it in my head. Don't give me the ideas. Don't make me want things that will never happen. Because I would love that, to be honest. Like I remember one of the stupid things I tried to do as a kid was actually like novelize the whole game. I was like writing it all down and I just gave up because I was like, oh my god, there's so much here because I'm like throwing everything into it. But yeah, I would love to see something like that. Yeah, I guess like I put like remake and sequel there, but like I'd honestly kind of oppose a sequel given or a prequel even because you can't access these games. It's like if someone made a Shadowhearts prequel, you can't get games on anything. So why would I want someone to? I don't know. Like I'm
Making me weep over here.
exactly. I know. I'm sorry. But it was also partially deliberate because I understood that you would understand.
That'll bring me up some emotions right there.
I want some Ben. I want some Junpero. I want some plot backstory to Yuri's father, 100%. But yeah, I just want it ported. I just want it ported with a speed up function and lower encounter rate and the Dreamcast music. Because I mean, like, obviously I get used to it pretty quickly, but yeah, that muffled soundtrack on the GameCube is not good. And like Sega acknowledged that Skies exists, right? Because they've got cameos in Valkyria, like Vice, Ica, and Fina are all in Valkyria Chronicles. And in fact, Vice and Ica are respectively their two best units of that type. Like they're so good.
Vice is also a racer in All Stars Racing Transformed, which is a lovely kart racing game.
So the
I
only
think Rocknum is in Sonic. It's in the Sonic game too.
I think he does make an appearance, yeah, in one of them. Yeah, the only reason I bought Sonic and Sega All-Star Racing Transformed is because of that. There is a whole stage in that game called Rogue's Landing, and you sail all the way through, like, around Sailor's Island. Rackham shows up, the Hydra shows up, there's a remix of the music, like, it's just the standard, like, Blue Rogues music, and then it shifts into the dungeon music, like the military base music, and to say that like I cried maybe for like I was like screaming for like 3.5 minutes straight the first time I ran that. I was like, oh my god. So they know it's there. And also Archie, like the comics who do like the Sonic the Hedgehog comics, they did like a crossover like universe with a bunch of like Sega games and Mega Man and stuff like that. Skies of Arcadia's in it. They know somebody out there is like just give me it. Like I'm not even gonna be coherent about it anymore. Just like am I ever coherent about it? Like, you know, see, I'm muddling my words now. There you go. You can definitely tell I've podcasted about my favorite game for about 3 hours, though. I've not made sense at times, and I've gone all over the place, and I've been cheeky and like basically like kind of dipped in my own save file on and off over the last couple of weeks. But like, I'm so glad the podcast has let us do this and talk about the game. I'm so glad everyone voted for it. In summer of 2021, and I'm so glad that like Zach and Audra got to play this for the first time because
it was good.
I'm excited to hear more of your thoughts, Audra, as you get towards the end. I'm really excited. But yeah, it's a joy to share with people because for all its faults, it does so many things so well. It's so unique as well. But it's just lovely. Like there's nothing. It felt like a real bright spot when it came out, and it still really stands out to me now as like something like I think what was that DS game? There's a DS game where you're like an air
Nostalgia?
pirate. Nostalgia. It might be Nostalgia. There's another one that rings a bell as well. I can't remember the name of it. But there's like airship travel and that. There was a lot of comparisons with that, and as well, like we've talked about Xenoblade on and off, like, but nothing's really like captured the same kind of feel as Skies. Not really come close to it, and I really, really hope Sega do something with it at some point because I'm really sad we don't have it accessible on modern consoles. But yeah, I think that about does it. We'll put the sails down, and I can't promise I'll never talk about this game again, but we're certainly like done waxing lyrical mass for 3 hours straight. So thank you, Wes, Zach, and Audra for joining me for these podcast episodes. It's been really great, and I'm really excited that we got to talk about it. So yeah,
Thanks for hosting.
I mean,
wonderful.
It was fun.
Who else was gonna do it? Like, I would have fought everybody to do this. But yeah, so obviously we're leaving behind Arcadia, and Audra has already mentioned the game we're covering for the next 2 weeks on Retro Encounter. We're going to be doing Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, which is pretty much the game that put BioWare on the map and really made them noticed by the wider world. KOTOR is extremely popular even now, and has recently had Switch ports and is getting some kind of a remake in the coming years. So I'll be excited to listen to the panel on that for the next couple of weeks. But March, we're doing something a little bit different. So sometimes we do like game journals for one game for 2 weeks, but March we're doing a whole month on Metroidvania, which is a genre, quote unquote. Some people like to say character action platformer, and there's debates over whether it's even a term, but whatever. Metroidvania games are amazing. They're like maybe my favorite genre outside of RPG, when they're not RPG related. So we're going to be playing 3 of those in March. We are going to be playing 2 RPG slanted ones. So we're going to be finally going to be playing another game that I've wanted to play for a while on the podcast.
Yes.
Castlevania Aria of Sorrow, which is probably the best Castlevania game. Maybe my second favorite Castlevania game. It's so good. I'm so excited about it.
I've been asking Sollosi for this game for many years.
It's a fantastic choice.
It's so good. You are going to enjoy it, I think. And we're also going to be playing Salt and Sanctuary, which is a 2016 indie RPG, which has got a little bit of Souls in there as well. And as a treat, we're going to be doing an episode on one non-RPG, and it's going to be Super Metroid, which really is we're going to be like examining the kind of journey of the Metroidvania title, I think, throughout the entire month. So we're doing one from the 90s, one from the noughties, and one from the 2010s. So it'll be really interesting to see how all of our views and differences like shape out. Like Aria of Sorrow and Super Metroid are like 2 of my favorite games ever. So there you go. That can't be a better month, really. But yeah, beyond that, we've got lots of things in the works on the show, so we're really excited to show them to you. In the meantime, if you want to talk to us, you can email retro@rpgfan.com. If you want to hear from Sollosi, he'll be managing that inbox the whole time. You can also comment on our Facebook page, Instagram. We've got Twitter where you can interact with us. We've got our own Discord server if you're already not a part of it. We've got a YouTube channel as well where we got reviews there. We've got like all sorts of like video features there, some historic ones, so please go and check that out. And if you visit Twitch, we've got something up there every single day. We've also got 2 other podcasts in-house. We've got Random Encounter, which is about random events and current topics. That's hosted by John O'Logan. And we've got Rhythm Encounter, which has got rotating hosts, and it'll be RPG music every other week. They alternate Mondays. But we've also got our partner podcasts who are on a break currently, Phoenix Edge, who deal with the current news and like upcoming trends and things like that. So please go check them all out. But if you want to check any of those out and give us a review as well, do that on your own podcast apps, whether you use Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, any of the others. Maybe don't use Spotify actually at the moment. You'll understand if you're listening to this currently. We love feedback. Anything we want to hear from you, whether it's good, bad, or it's about Skies in particular. I want to hear from you. But if you want to talk to us directly, where can you find us? Starting with you, Zach.
You can email me, zachw@rpgfan.com, or you can find me on our Discord at zachw.
And Wes.
If you want to make a questionable decision today, you can follow me on Twitter at Iliff.
Disagree with that statement. I disagree with that strongly. It's not questionable. It's the right decision. And Audra, what about you?
You can email me at audrab@rpgfan.com.
Well, I just said I was debating Wes about questionable, but I am also on the questionable website of Twitter as @Alana Hagues. I'm also on the questionable social media of Discord. Is that social media? That shows you something, doesn't it? That I don't use. But if you DM me, I am @Alana there, so I will always respond to DMs. But yeah, I'm so glad we did this. I'm so glad we managed to talk about Skies for a couple of weeks. I will not stop talking about Skies of Arcadia ever in my life. You know, the minute a remaster comes out, I will buy a special edition and I'll buy many people a copy of it. And I've nearly spent money on an Ica statue that costs $600, so somebody needs to stop me before I do that, because I can't afford that. But otherwise, that'll do us for Skies of Arcadia for a little bit. Until next time I'm on the show, I'm sure. Thank you, good night, and good luck.